Opus has been in theaters for a week now, and so I thought instead of giving a review, let's read other people's Letterboxd reviews and see if I agree with them or not. Let's get into it. Starting with the most popular, Cinema Joe, the TikToker, writes, Yes, we've seen variations of this movie before, but what makes Opus truly frustrating is that it only scratches the surface of its thesis, or worse, shows no interest in digging deeper. Edebiri is obviously infinitely talented, but even her performance felt a bit stilted here. Every line delivered with a similar cadence, strangely flat and restrained. It's a mixed bag movie, well composed and confidently directed, but ultimately toothless. I get where he's coming from here. The first part, we've seen variations of this movie before, yes, and we'll get to that later. But what I really liked about this movie specifically was the message that Joe here doesn't think it went deep enough into and only scratched the surface. And yeah, I do think that's true. It could have gone even more. I kind of liked how restrained it was at times, like you truly don't know what's going on and what these people are doing, and it doesn't really show its hand ever until like the very last scene. There are slight mentions of things like the levelism and how you can temporarily become a god, and it's all really confusing, and you don't get any answers to that. There's no point where John Malkovich goes, this is my big plan, and this is what I intend to do. You could argue that's what the final scene is, but at the same time, he's not very explicit in that, and with what he says. It's more how the movie portrays it and such that kind of gives you more answers. And with those themes of like fame and celebrity culture, could it have gone deeper? Sure, but at the same time, I'm happy it didn't. There is one like influencer character, but I think it really could have gone in like a cringy direction of where it just makes fun of influencers and like online culture, and it just kind of beats down on that and makes fun of it instead of actually having something interesting to say. So I would prefer this version that we got rather than that one. Josh gives it 2 stars and says, oh hey, it's Blink Twice, I mean The Menu, I mean Midsummer, I mean Don't Worry Darling, I mean Get Out, I mean... And I know what you mean. I know what you mean here, Josh. The one that doesn't necessarily fit, I think, is Don't Worry, Darling. Yes, it takes place in a setting with a mystery where the main character doesn't know what's going on around them, but it's not like all the other ones, Blink Twice, The Menu, Midsummer, Get Out, are like those characters are specifically invited somewhere. It's like you're invited to join us on this thing, and then weird things happen. It was same here with Opus. Don't Worry, Darling, that she just, I mean, it's been a while since I've seen that movie, but doesn't she just like start there as just like a housewife, and then more stuff gets revealed? Anyway, I know what you mean. It's all these movies are the same premise of person gets invited out somewhere and then weird things start happening. And this is what I wanted to talk about and like mention in Joe's review, is that all of these movies have different messages and meanings and themes behind them, and I think Opus has a different one than all of those other movies. I guess maybe the closest one you could say is The Menu, about how food is like art and being like snobby about it and stuff. And you could like John Malkovich's character is kind of regards his art as like a super high thing to be praised and worshipped and stuff. But at the same time, I don't think the themes touch any of those movies. Sure, the setups are all the same, and maybe some variety is needed there. I just don't know what variety that could be. I kind of like this subgenre. I enjoy it. I've enjoy all those movies, I guess, except maybe Don't Worry, Darling. Also, Get Out, I think, is also a little different than this, as it's like he's going to meet his girlfriend's parents. Instead of Blink Twice, The Menu, and Midsummer are more like they're really entering into this far unknown space. The other similar thing you could say is how the story progresses with each of those movies. They get invited somewhere, things seem fine, everyone puts on a happy front, and cracks start to show on what the sinister thing really is, and then maybe people go disappearing, and they're like, well, what is this? And then more and more gets revealed until the, big revelation happens. And that's the twist I like in Opus, is that there is no big revelation. All these other movies have a big revelation where they are like, oh shoot, like this is what this really is. That doesn't really happen with Opus. So I think it subverts the expectations of this little subgenre, you could say. Jer gives it 2.5 stars and writes Opus more like Poopus. Had to throw in one little joke review here. And all I have to say is, for something you think is poop, 2.5 stars is actually pretty high. I would expect maybe a 2 or even a 1.5 for something you call poop. But dang, that's good. This has 500 likes. Hannah J gives it 3 stars and writes, new fear of beanbags unlocked. Gotta throw in a positive review here and there, that the beanbag part was one of the scariest parts of the movie, if not the scariest, I think. And I was just like, wow, that's really creative. I don't think I've seen that in a movie before, that kind of scare and beanbags used in that way. And I thought that was great. You can say what you want about the movie, but that one shot in particular where that's good. Okay, can we all say that's good? And the rest of the popular reviews are basically just echoes of what I've already touched on about how it's similar to other movies and how it sort of just felt empty. So we're going to move on to the not popular reviews. These are just sorted by newest ones that don't have any likes or very few likes. So let's see what the more common folk are saying. And there was a big car horn when I said that, so hopefully the mic didn't pick that up. 100 Faye gives it a 0.5 star and writes, really didn't want to give this a 0.5 star, but the more I thought about it, the more the script just felt pointless compared to how good the cinematography and score were. Very much the definition of style over substance, or even the type of A24 movie for those who think A24 is the name of a movie genre. And then for some reason they list all the trailers that played before it. Good for them for keeping track of that, I guess. And I get it. Everyone has their own rating system for Letterboxd, but you can't say that the cinematography and score was good and then give it a 0.5 star. I mean, those alone, maybe 1 star, maybe. I do think the score and cinematography were very good, so I agree with you there. But then, the script just felt pointless. Sure, I do think... After everything I've said, I've sort of been defending this movie for a little bit, but I'll start to agree with you here maybe, and I'll talk about some negatives. It does seem meandering a little bit at the sort of midpoint of maybe one person has gone missing so far, and you're like, okay, what's actually going on here? And they're not giving you enough hints to really keep you engaged fully. Until later on when Edebiri is just fully like, okay, I want to leave, like, please let me leave now. That's when things start to pick up again. But before that, I agree, it can feel pretty slow. And I think maybe one of my biggest critiques is that the whole point of them being in this area is for the album debut and for him to play all the songs for them. And I think I did enjoy that scene. I just wish it felt like a bigger moment. It was just like, okay, let's go to the building now and listen to the songs. And then it happens, and that scene itself was shot very well in the circling camera, and the performances were good, and the song I think was just so funny in the way that the song was bad, and how this intentionally bad, an intentionally cheesy modern pop song that's really nothing special, but then all the characters treat it like it's something special, and hey, maybe that plays into the point of the movie, huh? But I wish that moment felt more like the characters played it more of oh my gosh, this is a huge deal that we're listening to this now, and the movie sort of treated it that way. There's a critique for you. And then style over substance, sure, but I do think this movie had substance, is what I'm getting at. I think, to be honest, I've been thinking about the themes a lot more than I have been thinking about the visuals after I've seen it, and about, again, that ending scene and what his whole goal was with this thing and the levelism and everything. I've been thinking about that. The only shot I've really been thinking about is the beanbag shot that we've talked about. Manuela gives it 2.5 stars and writes, "All I remember is Io and her hair. The hair looked so good." And I agree, especially at the beginning when it's all like kind of out like this. She looked a lot like their Envy character from Inside Out 2, like that hair. But then her hair, gets styled and all that. Then when she gets there, and hey, themes of people controlling appearances and all that stuff. And the shaving, can we talk about the shaving scene real quick? Now that's a good scene. Talk about some substance there, because that was crazy. I loved that part, and it made you feel so uneasy and was like, what? And again, yeah, them like redoing her hair and taking away her identity in that way. Great way to play into the themes, but her hair did look great. I wanted to throw in another joke review because this one gave me a chuckle. DN Bot gives it 3.5 stars and writes, "More like Heaven's 8, and then a bunch of emojis. If you don't know, Heaven's Gate is a real-life cult that ended in a way you can probably guess, and I'm not going to say it in this video, but I'm glad DN Bot gave it 3.5 stars and thought this movie 8. We've been doing some negative stuff, so I wanted to sort it by the people who gave it 5 stars to see what they're saying. Bray gives it 5 stars and says, "Now who was that diva chasing Io Edebiri?" Crying emoji. That would be Amber Midthunder, star of Prey, and she's been in other stuff too. More recently, I think, but I think she did a really good job in this part, especially for not talking at all and only using her face. She did good, and I mean, for that specific role, I think it worked, but I do want to see her in more speaking parts in the future. And lastly, let's wrap things up with another positive review. Maddie Janae gives it 5 stars and writes, 10 out of 10, not one dull moment, and the suspense made it amazing. I would definitely go pay to watch it again. Isn't this the beauty of opinions, everybody? We've got some half-star reviews. We got some 5-star reviews. And I'm really glad Maddie here seemed to really enjoy it. And how I said there were some dull moments in there. I do think the suspense and mystery, it keeps you watching. It's like you want to know what this whole thing is. So even if you get a little bored in the middle, it's the way it's set up is worth sticking it out for. You're like, okay, I need to know, even though I'm a little bored right now. I never got like completely bored during the movie, but I like I said earlier, it does have its lulls. So when Maddie here says not one dull moment, maybe there was 1 or 2, let's be honest. That's my opinion. Suspense made it amazing. I agree. I really enjoyed the suspense. And especially when, let's back to Amber Midthunder, when that whole chase scene when they're like in the replica house and she's hiding in the bathtub, great suspense. I loved it. Even though I could sort of predict what the next move was going to be, it still caught me off guard, and because you don't know when it's going to happen, but you know it's going to happen. So I thought that sequence had great suspense too. Pay to watch it again, that's great, because I don't think this movie is making much money in the box office. And hey, support original filmmaking. I know that's the big thing this week with like Novocaine and this movie and the other one, Black Bag. I think those were the 3 originals, and I intend to see all those 3, so keep an eye out on the channel and become a channel member where I will be covering every new release. But for now, this was my opinion and reaction to all these Opus reviews. Hopefully, maybe you got a sense of what I thought of the movie. Leave your guess on how many stars I gave it in the comments below, and I'll see you all next time. But in the meantime, watch this next video.